Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, do you hear me properly? I have a great privilege, pleasure, and an honor to deliver the opening words of this seminar on defending NATO's northern flank, power protection and military operations. The theme is more than topical. This topic holds particular significance as Finland acceded to the Washington Treaty and became NATO's 31st ally on the 4th of April this year. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this seminar on the occasion of the publication by Routledge of the book Defending NATO's Northern Flank. I'm grateful for the presence of so many of you today at the ballroom here in Ostrobotnia and online. Specifically, I'm happy to welcome our national special guests and our distinguished speakers. Dr. Njord Wegge from Norwegian Military Academy, and Associate Professor of Military History, Dr. Lon Strauss from Command and Staff College, U.S. Marine Corps University, who is attending the seminar online from the United States. Warm greetings and welcome to you from Helsinki. Thank you for joining, sir, so early in the morning. In approximately 30 minutes, we will have a great honor to welcome our Finnish special guest, Lieutenant General Janne Jaakkola, Deputy Chief of Staff, Strategy from the Finnish Defence Forces, to join our seminar as a third keynote speaker. I want to express my sincere thanks and deepest gratitude to Professor Dr. Hanna Ojanen, President of EuroDefense Finland, who is moderating this seminar today. An event like this doesn't come overnight. Dr. Ojanen contacted me a few months ago and introduced an idea about this project, which is realizing here today. It has been a great pleasure to cooperate with you. This seminar is organized by the Atlantic Council of Finland, EuroDefense Finland, and Norwegian Defence University College. Thank you all for great and pleasant cooperation, which is highly appreciated. World is small, and especially the circles of the Atlanticists. Yesterday, Professor Njord Wegge and I realized that we have been in Atlantic Treaty Association in the JATA family at the same time at the beginning of 2000 as students of political science. Professor Wegge was the head of JATA Norway and me as an active head of JATA Finland, which is established in 2003. Such a pleasant coincidence and wonderful to meet you again, this time in Helsinki. All these fond memories of my own JATA time came to my mind, and me as a Secretary General of the Atlantic Council of Finland and as a founding mother of the Atlantic Council of Finland Youth, JATA Finland, I'm deeply touched that we have so many new active members in JATA Finland. I think it's extremely important that we have this young generation dedicated to this great initiative, and which is building the future of the Atlanticists. The importance of the network of all 37 national Atlantic Councils and Atlantic Councils Youth Network, the headquarters Atlantic Treaty Association, ADA, and JATA is crucially important in this new era when Finland is a NATO ally. Finally, once again, warm welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend this seminar on this Friday afternoon. I hope you will find this seminar interesting and informative. Thank you very much, and once again, welcome.
Many thanks indeed to the Atlantic Council of Finland, in particular to Secretary General Terhi Suominen, not only for making these events happen, but also showing a model of how to run an extremely successful association. So a warm welcome to everyone, also on behalf of EuroDefense Finland, both to those sitting here and those online. We are really very happy and honored to have the chance to launch this new book, Defending NATO's Northern Flank, Power Projection and Military Operations, here in Helsinki. It is a collection of utterly timely chapters, articles on NATO's Northern Flank, written by a variety of experts. I am very happy to have had the chance to contribute with a chapter as well on Finland and Sweden, written together with Arto Väisänen, who is also present here in the audience. The book, as you might see already when entering, it is on display in the hall, and you can find out more on the book using the QR code in the leaflet that you have. Now, how these events will be run. We will have 3 short 15-minute presentations, keynotes, first by the 2 excellent editors and also contributors to the book, one present here, one online, from Quantico, Virginia, and then by our Finnish speaker who will join us soon. And I will introduce them more in detail as we go. After these 3 presentations, we will have time for your questions, answers by our speakers, and also our speakers are most welcome to comment on each other and discuss. The event is streamed and will be available to watch on YouTube also afterwards. So this is our program this afternoon, and now I would like to turn to our first speaker. Njord Wegge is Professor in Political Science, International Relations at the Norwegian Military Academy, which is part of the Norwegian Defence University College. Next year, Njord starts in a position as an adjunct professor in geopolitics at the University of Tromsø, the Arctic University of Norway. The University of Tromsø is also where he finished his PhD 10 years ago, focusing on international relations in the Arctic. Njord Wegge has published extensively on topics related to security and military power in the Arctic, hybrid warfare, intelligence service, democratic control of intelligence services, and intelligence methods. And he leads several research projects focusing on security and military power in the Arctic. Njord has also been a visiting scholar at Marine Corps University, Quantico, USA, and worked at the Fridtjof Nansen Institute, as well as the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs, NUPI, and for the Norwegian Parliamentary Intelligence Oversight Committee. Now we'll hear from Njord Wegge about some key findings in the book and how it links to current security challenges. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Hanna. And thank you, the Finnish Atlantic Committee, for inviting us, letting us have this day here today. It's great, and EuroDefense Finland as well. I also want to thank you, Hanna, for reaching out and suggesting that we perhaps should have the book launch here in Helsinki. And we had, I would say, barely started thinking about, where could we have such an event? And I think this would be the most timely and best occasion, actually, to have such a launch. Personally, it's also great for me to be in Helsinki. It's a great event to watch one of our closest country joining NATO. And I think I'm talking on behalf of most Norwegians when I say we were very happy to see that happen. And I've been here a few times, not the least with the Hybrid Center of Excellence lately, and it's really great to be back. So some overall comments on the book project. So I think all books like this, which is an edited volume, is a unique journey. And on the one side, you need to find research questions, make a holistic project where things fit together, but you also need to find the right people. And there's usually questions about funding, and in addition, you have a review process. And I would say all these parts have come together pretty nicely. I think we have a good mixture of topics as well as researchers contributing. And I would like to specifically comment a little bit on the review process, because this book project has taken a couple of years. And as all of us know, there has happened so much. And when we made the book proposal, that was prior to Russia's attack on Ukraine. So obviously, we had a different sort of like perspective. And I think it was more or less through the review of the book proposal that Russia attacked. So of course, one of the comments were, you know, now this is not so interesting anymore. We have a full-fledged war on the European continent. So that was one of the reviewers' comment on the book proposal itself. But a couple of others said, you know, this is a highly timely project, but make sure to include Finland and Sweden, you know, just having applied for NATO membership. And therefore, you know, I reached out to Hanna, which was one of the scholars I knew about in Finland, and you were able to come on board. So I'm very, very happy how that happened. I also think it has been a unique period to make a book because so much was happening. I've never really experienced so many changes, I would say, when I've been working academically on an article or a chapter that was happening here. Another thing I would like to just say or tell about the research process was that we had last year a workshop in Quantico at the Marine Corps University where Lon is at, and most of the contributors were able to fly in, and we met together physically at the Routledge Center of Innovation and Future Warfare. And unfortunately, Hanna could only participate digitally, but that was an important event. And in September this year, we also had a conference in Tromsø, northern Norway, where we presented our findings. So this is, in a way, the final period. So now we have the book physically present. It just came out, literally came out a few weeks ago. And it's great to see the final project. So why a book on NATO's northern flank? So for Norwegians and maybe for Finns, it's sort of like self-evident that that is important. But I would just like to remind everyone that the Kola Peninsula, which is next to the Norwegian border in the north, and also, I guess, northern Lapland, is the location of the most valuable strategic second strike capability assets that Russia has. So even now, when we see a conventional war playing out in Ukraine, their strategic assets is extremely important for Russia. So for Norway and Finland as northern flank countries, what Russia has and do in their northwestern part on the Kola Peninsula is always very, very important for us, but also the NATO alliance. And we also remember that the shortest distance between North America and Europe is over the Arctic Ocean and over the North Pole, which is also right where we have the northern flank of NATO. So geography matters. It will always be like that. Things might happen when it comes to technology. Weapon system might be relocated, but some of these basic features will probably be present for a very, very long time. I also think that the so-called bastion defense concept, at least in Norwegian discussions, have been more, people in general have been more familiar with it. So it's the idea that one think in case of a conflict with NATO, Russia would try to deny Western activity in the Norwegian Sea down towards the geo gap, so Greenland, Iceland, UK gap, and as we know, there's a lot of submarine activities where Russia is developing more silent submarines. So this concept how Russia will defend their strategic asset really matters, and this is at the core of what this book also deals with. So many of the technological advances and sort of like modernization processes and experimentation of new systems, they all take place in Russia's Arctic, and which is literally bordering NATO's northern flank. So what does the book bring of new knowledge? I think after Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, it was a big change in mindset in Europe. Territorial defense was back after a couple of decades with desert wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. The United States and many of the major nations in the NATO alliance had forgotten in a way how to fight a peer competitor in the Arctic, which they were training all the time during the Cold War. So the last few years has been very important in bringing back some of these kind of forgotten skills that Norway and Finland more or less kept, given our geography. And I think there's a lot of concepts and also training, doctrines, etc., that needs to be evolved. And this is something that the book writes about, and maybe Lon will touch upon some of those issues. I think also the book points to the future. There's a lot of topics that are dealt with that are directly relevant for future evolution. For example, debates on deterrence. How should we think about deterring, escalation control, reassurance measures? I know that you have bilateral talks with the United States here. Sweden just released their bilateral negotiations with the US on agreed areas for cooperation and military assistance. And there's a lot of dynamic that we are specifically touching on in this book, and that we also will need to continue to do research on. I also think much of our Nordic defense plans need to be rewritten. As I mentioned, geography is more or less constant here, but now with like a double border between NATO and Russia, more or less connecting the Baltic Sea with the Arctic Ocean, the Barents Sea, it really changes many of the plans. So growing up in Norway during the end of the Cold War, the 90s, and now after Crimea, sort of like slowly thinking about a symmetrical peer competitor in our northern region, we have always thought, you know, we couldn't be sure that we could use, or NATO could use, Finnish and Swedish territory, which creates a lot of problem, and it really creates obstacles to how you could, you know, move troops or logistics supply, etc. So now with Finland and most likely Sweden soon joining NATO, it's a completely new map. And all of these plans need to be rewritten. And we are touching on that, and that will be more important in the future. And I also think some of sort of like the new blurred areas, the hybrid spectrum, where there's sabotage or information campaigns, cyber attack, more bullying behavior. There's a lot of sort of like under threshold of Article 5 and NATO response is very relevant for future defense and security planning in the Nordic countries, which is important, and this book introduces. Yeah. And finally, I think we could say that the Arctic has a new normal in many ways. The idea about an Arctic exceptionalism, an area of exceptional cooperation where, you know, sort of like conflict or patterns of conflict behavior is not existing, that doesn't really fit the description of the Arctic anymore. I think we have a region that has it's like an overall strategic competition setting, where there's not only within the military field there's competition, maybe within research, legal developments, the use of like dual use capabilities, civil and shipping industry, domain awareness, for example, satellite technology. The northern flank region and the Arctic certainly has a more competitive, let's say, touch, where it's important not to be naive and think long term. And in a way, we could, sort of, from a IR, international relations perspective, say it's going towards a situation where relative gains between the actors matters maybe more than the absolute gains. So we would look to what degree is this evolution better compared to the competitors' gain, rather than if we both do a little better, that's more important. So that's an important shift in sort of like the dynamic. And finally, I also think on the long term, in the long-term perspective, we should think what's the role of China. Ukraine is really depleting many of the, let's say, land power resources of Russia now. It's pushing the Russian economy. We don't know how that war will end or how long it will last or what kind of status we'll end up with. But it's not unlikely that China might have a more strategic cooperation with Russia, also playing into the Arctic. So that's also a dimension of this very dynamic region. And I think we made a good attempt in our book. Okay.
Many thanks indeed, Njord, for setting us off. And indeed, the map is changing. Many things are changing. Some things perhaps stay, and this is a good way to start thinking. And I'm sure the other questions will be coming. I would like to introduce now to you our second speaker from online, from Quantico in Virginia, Lon Strauss, who is an associate professor of military history at the US Marine Corps Command and Staff College, which is part of Marine Corps University. Prior to that, he taught at the US Army War College as well as several civilian universities. Lon Strauss has published on issues of US Arctic security and US military history, including military intelligence in the First World War, combat operations, trench warfare, interwar planning, and societal mobilization. He is chair of the membership and staffing committee of the Society for Military History, director of Marine Corps University's Arctic Strategic Initiative, an editor for the International Encyclopedia 1914 to 1918 online, and he's also on the editorial board of the Journal of Peace and War Studies. Lon, we are really happy that you can take part today despite the very, very early morning hour, and we are very much looking forward to hearing from you. The floor is yours.
Before I get started, I have to offer an obligatory disclaimer that everything I say is on behalf of myself and my own personal views. They don't represent the Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Defense, the Marine Corps, or any other governmental agency. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, I would like to echo Njord and thank the Atlantic Council of Finland, as well as the EuroDefense Finland, Hanna specifically, for putting all of this together, working to put all this together. Unfortunately, she and I have not met face to face yet. One of us now has been virtual in all of our different meetings. And of course, I'd like to thank Njord. He is really the brains behind all of these projects that we wind up working on together. He's the leader that kind of drives all of this, and those of you who have had an opportunity to speak with him or will have an opportunity to speak with him will completely understand why. So this project, this book project, would not have come to fruition without all of his efforts and his leadership. So thanks to Njord for that. So from very early in the morning in the United States, what I'm going to focus on is the United States. That's kind of the role that I brought to all of this. I think that our book project, in a lot of ways, from an American perspective, is just as vital, just as important. The Arctic, as I think many recognize from a U.S. perspective, has fallen through the cracks. There has been a lot of complacency, I think, on our side of the Atlantic for where the role of the Arctic falls within overall American strategy. That makes some sense, of course, in the post-Cold War world and with the state that the Arctic has been in for a very long time, as seen as one of collaboration. But as Njord mentioned, and as all of you know, right, things have changed very quickly, very rapidly, even while things have been changing very slowly, but noticeably with climate change and the environment for quite some time. Again, there's still some debate here, I guess I would say, in the US, although I like to think that we all agree on the state of the Arctic at this point, but that could just be, again, my own personal view coming in. The United States is really, as a major global power, has a challenge in juggling a lot of global commitments. And I think this is an important part of where our book comes in, because for the United States, say Arctic readiness, some might argue cold weather readiness, in a lot of ways has fallen through the cracks. What we have seen are new strategic concepts come out over the last few years, and in fact, the Department of Defense, I believe, is about to release new strategic guidance on the Arctic, and the services are going to follow suit. I know the Department of the Navy specifically is coming out with new strategic guidance, and I believe the Army and the Air Force and the Coast Guard are going to follow suit as well. But in the sense of where the U.S. as a NATO partner comes in, our book took this approach that for most NATO partners, and the US specifically, but for the majority of NATO, NATO's northern flank and the Arctic is an expeditionary operation, right? You're the few countries that reside in that region. For the rest of us, we got to get there. And so we approach this from the perspective of the Department of Defense and how they define expeditionary, as well as looking at the U.S. Marine Corps' definition of how they define expeditionary, right? And a big issue here are the new concepts that U.S. services have come out with. So the U.S. Marine Corps has, in the last few years, come out with Force Design 2030, Expeditionary Advanced Based Operations, or EABO. The U.S. Army is putting forward multi-domain operations, which again has influenced now NATO doctrine and NATO concepts, also adopting MDO, JADO coming through from the Air Force, but also writ large joint all-domain operations. And all of these concepts really rely on this idea that there is a stand-in force or there is an inside force. From a US perspective, that's we want our forces there, inside, already inside the zone, so that we can disrupt, deter, and so on. But from a NATO perspective, NATO country perspective, say Finland, Sweden, Norway, you are the stand-in force. You are already there. Right? But from an American perspective, how do we get to NATO's northern flank? And especially as Njord pointed out, right, the bastion defense, again, in the United States, I think it's common knowledge among national security folks, but beyond that, less so. But this idea that Russia will use submarines or use anti-air aerial denial, the A2AD, to keep U.S. Or Western Hemisphere forces at bay to get to Europe. In a broader sense here, I'd like to put this in the context of, unlike the Ukraine war, which we have seen is an isolated event. I mean, sure, it spills out in various ways, but as a war, it's isolated in Ukraine. When we talk about NATO and a possible war, say, with an adversary like Russia, we're talking more of a general conflict, I think, in our mind, right? This is blown up. And in that sense, I think our military and many folks within the national security environment still think in the terms of isolated events, right? We have plans and we're prepared for these isolated events. But in the sense of if a general war were to erupt, right? We know that the US Army and EUCOM are very much focused on Central Europe. That is the main line of defense. It has been since the Second World War. Conceptually, that's how we think of things. Therefore, where does NATO's northern flank fit in this idea? What kind of challenges does NATO's northern flank propose? On top of that is, are we ready? Is the United States ready? Or are NATO allies ready? And our book really takes this on, this idea, especially from a US perspective. One, our strategy. We have several chapters that kind of go over an overview of US strategy over time, where US strategy has been and where it's gotten today in terms of looking at the Arctic and looking at NATO's northern flank. It's been a very slow process, but we're coming to terms. As I said, this is continually changing. It's still changing right now with new strategic guidance coming out. Similarly, operationally, are our forces prepared to operate, dominate in this environment? And I think the answer is no. That's the answer that we've come up with. There are faults here. We've been focused elsewhere, as Njord pointed out. We've been focused on desert warfare. The U.S. is very much focused on the Indo-Pacific, right? So where does that put, say, a front, or put the NATO's northern flank, or put the Arctic in terms of U.S. preparedness? We're making headway. The U.S. Army has made the 11th Division in Alaska. It's supposed to be cold weather specific. The U.S. Marine Corps continually exercises with NATO partners in Norway and elsewhere. Just recently, not that long ago, they tested out the EABO concept in the Baltic Sea, which I know is of immense importance to Sweden and Finland. So we're making baby steps, if you will, testing out our concepts, moving forward, but is it enough? And I think our book attempts to make kind of a clarion call that no, it's not. There's a lot more to do. Applaud the efforts that have been made, but there is a lot more that both the United States and its NATO partners need to do to prepare for possible military operations in this region, and especially in the sense of if there are too many fires to put out all at once. The Navy has a role to play, so we have a chapter that looks at that and strategic partnership. Special Forces obviously has a role to play, and we have a chapter that takes a look at that. Overall, I think what these chapters bring together, and what the entirety of the book project brings together, is that what we already know. We're stronger together. The differences that our forces bring to the table these unique positions geographically and the unique focuses that our militaries specialize in that we bring to the table strengthens us overall. And so we need to leverage that more. Yeah, so I think what I'll do is I'll stop it there because I really want to get us to the Q&A. I'd really like to address kind of the questions that you all might have. But yeah, so I'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Lon. Really very, very interesting. And I also heard about the change of strategy, something that we might bring up again in the discussion. Hello. Just fantastic timing. So let me now introduce to you our third speaker. Lieutenant General Janne Jaakkola is the Deputy Chief of Staff Strategy in Finnish Defence Forces. Prior to this, he has served in several central positions, just mentioning a few here. Chief of Staff Logistics and Chief of Plans and Policy. Lieutenant General Jaakkola has also served both in Kosovo, KFOR in 2003, and in Afghanistan, ISAF in 2009. What is also of great interest to us today is that he has completed the General Staff Officer course in Norway, Forsvarets høgskole. I am soon opening to the floor for questions, just giving perhaps Njord and Lon the possibility for a quick reaction or a question at this point. Njord.
I'm happy to ask you a question, and thank you for your presentation. So, from the Norwegian perspective, it's of course extremely important that Finland joins NATO. But we also know that Finland have their center of gravity and population center in the south, and everything north of Rovaniemi is very sparsely populated and actually not so much military troops stationed either. So how do you see this shared border? And I mean, Norway is sort of like literal focus in Finnmark, but there's a vast area in Finland there where hardly any people lives. And so how should we protect the border together? What's the challenges, or how can we do it in the best way?
Thank you. Thank you. I would start with the cooperation with other authorities. The latest developments in our eastern border concerning the weaponizing the immigration has proved the system in a sense that our border guards stationed obviously on the border are able to fulfill their duties, and the cooperation with the defense forces and police is functioning very well. And I have to say, personally, I have to say that I'm very proud of the units doing the work. But you are perfectly right on that one, that the people, the infrastructure is in south, and if the need is in the north, we'll have to move the people from the south. Sweden has the same problem. But of course, obviously, for Sweden, as I said, the something south from Stockholm is more important than what's in the north, if I may say so. And of course, this being reality, when we are revising the NATO plans or bilateral plans or Nordic plans, we have to take this into account, that the defense of the north, which is obviously because of the Murmansk and the Kola Peninsula Russian capabilities on that side, needs to be strong enough. And it means that we have to create a joint plan which takes this into account. And already before the membership, we have a very good planning going on with Sweden and also with Norway, and we will hopefully soon, when the decision about the force command structure is done, we will proceed this one with the speed.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. So this is the first set of questions. I would like to give the floor to you for answers in the order of appearance, so to say, starting with Njord, please.
Very good questions here. So to answer the direct question to me first regarding Svalbard, Svalsat situation there, what changes? So yeah, Svalbard is a unique part of Norway. It has a Svalbard Treaty regulating the use of the island for military purposes. So I think the bottom line is that the Svalbard Treaty will be interpreted, according to the time in a way. It's literally stating that we should not build fleets or fleet facilities and fortifications and use the island for warlike purposes. I think let's say the tradition of using civilian infrastructure like satellite data downloading centers that could potentially have dual use will continue. A lot of civilian infrastructure can potentially be used for military purposes, so that is not a unique feature of the situation in Svalbard. But I also think the concern is perhaps rising a little bit with the general more tense security climate, and that it's higher on the agenda, and that we have to think more specifically how we should defend Svalbard. Do you want me to continue with a couple of other things or come back? Yeah, so the balance of power, for example, and also Finland defending itself. I definitely think there's a high need in Europe to step up production of weapons, make the infrastructure more robust. I just saw the numbers coming out from, I think, Europe regarding 155 millimeters artillery production, where the aim was like 1 million pieces, and we are going towards 60,000. I mean, this is just a reflection of the current status. So this is a very important recognition that needs to make changes in the political level, and that Europe really needs to sort of realize that there's a completely different international climate today, where, as you say, Russia is gearing up towards like a war footing type of production now, and I think your comment is very good, and we need to do something. And regarding Finland and I think what was said here, that Finland can defend itself. We have, a defense for self-defense is very, very good news in NATO, because many NATO countries have dramatically scaled down their ability to actually defend themselves. So that is fantastic. And I think what Finland can receive from NATO is a lot of things. It could, of course, be air power or, intelligence, things that can sort of like be delivered. But I think also boots on the ground, and both through air and by ships. But this goes back to the, anti-access air denial capabilities and the bastion defense. We need to make sure that we could penetrate or, operate across the Atlantic. And for Norway, for example, we have for a long period been focusing on the US Marine as the main partner. Now with the US Army having their 11th Airborne Division focusing on cold weather operations in Alaska and being stationed there, training to fly into Norway through the air, is definitely something that we think is important and positive. But of course, the large volume would need to go by ship usually, and be shipped from Norway, now being more a transition country further south.
Thank you. I would go to Lon Strauss now. The question of Greenland and also the others, please, Lon.
Thank you. Yeah, those are great questions. So for the first question, I only caught the first part, so I hope I didn't miss something. But former President Trump's effort to purchase Greenland, and I'm not going to attempt to what's the word I'm looking for here, to be politically savvy. See into the mind of the former president and how he's possibly looking to the future here, though there are some challenges, definitely challenges there. I think with Greenland, it's vital to North American security, obviously. It's also a weak spot, if you will, as we saw with China recently, the last few years, right, attempting to make investments in Greenland, which spurred that whole situation where the former president offered to purchase Greenland from Denmark. One of our chapters actually deals with Greenland and Denmark in some of these issues, so there's some goodness there. Again, if I could throw back to the book, I don't think we'll see that pop up again. Although what we are seeing is state-to-state relations, and I think that there are State Department funds and appropriations that are hopefully going into Greenland. Again, I can't speak any more specifically than that, and I'm not completely in the know there. But when we're talking about this situation and transatlantic trade, or especially with military capabilities getting across the transatlantic, and the possibility of the Russian bastion defense, to what Njord was just talking about, Greenland's going to be vital. So there need to be, I think, good relations there, and hopefully, any hurt feelings can be healed, and those relations can benefit as we move forward. To one of the other questions about Finland and NATO, again, that Njord was talking about, this idea of weaponry and our focus on technology versus the human element, as well as how societies ramp up in wartime, if you will, their production capabilities. But it goes beyond just production capabilities, because it's really societal and it's cultural. This is an aspect that fascinates me on a professional level. I think we in the United States focus a great deal on technological capabilities. So as was mentioned, ISR, that is something that we're putting a lot of money into. It is something that we're relying on immensely. The Marine Corps specifically, right, with its new EABO concept, is really banking on this, is smaller units that have ISR capabilities, that can do a recon, counter-recon capabilities, that are mobile, so they can stay under an adversary's radar and so on. That's great, and I think that's vital, right? But on the flip side of that is the human element, is the boots on the ground. We cannot rely simply on technology to answer all of these questions. And I think we see this play out across the board, both in a military sense, and again, in a civilian or a larger societal sense, with discussions like AI. So I won't harp on that too much, but I think that human element is extremely important for NATO's northern flank, and one in which I think if I were to make a criticism that we, the United States, needs to focus on a lot more. I think we do this with the exercises. The general mentioned that. There are several exercises that are going. The United States participates in all of these. I would like to see more. I would like to see more relationship building. I would like to see more boots on the ground in a kind of civ mil building, cultural societal building relationships, now in a larger NATO NATO context. So let me clarify that I don't want to see a lot of American boots, in NATO countries just building up forces, not unless that's asked for and is deemed militarily necessary. I'm talking about literally the human element, culturally and socially, which I think underpins these relationships. And that is not, it's harder to do on the fly. Same thing as we're seeing with building up industry. That's something you need to plan ahead. That's harder to do on the fly. And I think, again, as a historian, when you look at this, historically in big wars, the world wars, large general wars, it takes months to years to build up a lot of these capabilities. And as we're seeing in the war in Ukraine with things like the 155 millimeter shells, what we think we're prepared for a next war, what will expend in ordnance, tends not to be the reality. It's way higher. We saw this in the First World War, we saw it in the Second World War, we're seeing it today, right? So I think that these discussions are relevant. What that means for the military-industrial complex versus our independent private capital industries that are mostly civilian, although as Njord points out, there's a lot of dual use industries, right? I think that, right, that's more difficult and that's harder to work out. It's a fascinating topic though, so I'll leave that. I'll leave that there. Yeah, no, this is great. I've got some other thoughts too, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Lon. And General Jaakkola, please.
Thank you for the questions. The first one concerning the south-north dilemma of the Finnish defense. Of course, the importance of both these areas and also middle part of actually remain. So the big picture in that sense has not changed. We have to take care of the south, the Baltics. We have to take care of the middle part, and we have to take care of the northern part. What's new in the situation, obviously, as a member, is that we have the resources also from our allies and partners. Of course, the basis is, as I said earlier, is the national defense, and this is very much to do with the readiness part of the defense. But then there's two elemental questions concerning the allied support. It's about reinforcements, and then it's a question about the host nation support. How can we receive and support the reinforcements in Finland? And the second question is the cooperation and coordination, meaning that how we actually plan together, how do we actually command these allied elements together with the national assets. And as also mentioned in the earlier speech, it's about exercises, exercising things for them to be the reality. And this leads me to the second question concerning the support to Finland. Is it troops or is it capabilities? It's both. Obviously, if you think about the Finnish the position in the map, most probably it will start with the capabilities and then followed by the troops. And of course, this is done as a part of the operational planning. And actually, the meeting I was attending yesterday and today about the defense planning process is about creating those capabilities and forces that are deployable to support the allied operations in 360 manner in the area of responsibility. Then concerning the question 10 years time, I guess it's better not to second guess what's going to happen or forecast, but some elements, at least from my perspective as a chief of strategy in Finland. The first one is that we usually see the threat as an equation of will and capability. I would add that it's will and opportunity, and its capability and capacity. The first one, will and capability. We can discuss the scenario that in which situation the Russia would be prepared to challenge the NATO and the Article 5 in the future, or is it going to be more hybrid means? What is the scenario where they would like to use the high intensity warfare against NATO? It means that the deterrence part fails if the latter scenario happens. It means that the combination of conventional force deterrence and nuclear deterrence fails, and this is a big question. If you look at the media last few months, there has been a lot of discussion about the U.S. resources overstretched in various crises and areas in the globe, which is of course the reality. And in one article I read that there might be a scenario that the U.S. is concentrating. No, this is not news to nobody. That U.S. is more concentrated on the Indo-Pacific area. So in the Europe, the emphasis is on nuclear deterrence. It means directly that Europe has to do its own share concerning the conventional deterrence. Excuse me. So again, we have to take our own share on this one, so that the combination of conventional and nuclear deterrence is in order to prevent the Russia to trying the Article 5 in the future. Of course, when we are talking about, as discussed earlier, about the mass or the attrition warfare or versus the high technology, technological edge, the utilization of the latest technology, the challenge with the technology is the adaptation cycle, meaning that the opponent learns how to operate with these new elements of technology in a rather short period. And the second challenge is the volume, how much advanced technology you can afford. Because you have to make the balance, you have to make the resource allocation for the more conventional mass quantitative force versus the more qualitative but smaller number force in the defense. And of course, if you're looking at a 10 years time perspective from here, we have seen the future already in Ukraine, but it's in small pieces. I would argue that within 10 years, the mass use of autonomous systems, swarming systems all around the battle space is the new reality we have to be prepared for. And they are cheap ones. They're getting cheaper and cheaper and every time. And when you have these high technology, high-end platforms at your defense forces force catalog, you really have to protect them. So you have to be very innovative in order to maintain the combat power in the more traditional defense or armed forces. And of course, if you look at the lessons identified, not learned, but identified in Ukraine, one of the key elements is the decision advantage. How are you able to make the decisions more efficiently, more rapidly than your opponent? That's the key issue. As I said in the beginning, for example, Russia, it's not deterred by losses of men. So you have to engage some other parts of the military system of Russia in order to be effective. This might be the command and control, this might be the so-called kill chain, and so-called high-end platforms, but nevertheless you have to figure it out. And in order to make this happen, you need a more efficient decision-making cycle, and this is what the NATO, we in the NATO is applying for, the multi-domain operations, the integration of all the intelligence surveillance assets and also the effectors That will be the conceptual development in NATO. Perhaps I'll stop here. Thank you.
But I would now really suggest that you pick and choose what you would like to answer, what topics you still want to take up, and each of you would have like 2-3 minutes, and I would go in the reverse order with General Jaakkola first.
Thank you. Ukrainian support, obviously political question, military perspective. You know, the Western countries, let's say European countries, have given quite much of the material from the storages. So the strategic question in this sense is how do we engage the defense industry on this work so that the Western industry is able to and capable to produce material so that we can keep and continue the support for the Ukraine. Concerning Arctic, it's not just about maritime, air, or even land. It's about all domains, and I would like to raise up the space and cyber. We all know that, for example, concerning the space and the ground stations for those satellites and so forth, that the location of the Nordic countries is a very good one. So that's has to be taken into account. And obviously, from this, the question is interoperability. So what we do in the north concerning the North Kalot, the landmass, or the Arctic, the Barents Sea, is interoperability. What the NATO or the single nations are doing there remains to be seen, but what we are doing, we have to be interoperable in order to function and to act together in the area. The credible deterrence with the USA, yes, and the defense cooperation agreement is the proof of life, of concept on this one. Sweden already signed. We are in a process to sign that one also, and then starts the implementation of this agreement, and that's exactly what Admiral said here. Thank you.
Thank you. And over to Lon, please.
Thank you. So great questions. I missed aspects of some of them because I think the mic was cutting out. So I'm going to go with what I think I heard. And the general's responses certainly helped with some of the context there. So as briefly as I can, I'll tackle the idea of the credible deterrence with the U.S. and especially with I'll approach this from our service concepts, which is how we kind of set up our book with this. I think yes, right. Conceptually, I think that this offers a way of establishing a credible deterrence. MDO, EABO, JADO, all these concepts. The proof, though, is also in the pudding, right, as it were, in the activities. And I think we're still fleshing a lot of that out. Speak with, the Air Force about what is JADO, what's JADC2, or speak with the Army and what's MDO, and I think, you'll get a lot of different explanations that are dancing around kind of what these are. This is important to me because conceptually how we think about this is how we're going to train, man and equip our forces that we send. And then the combatant command gets to determine how they're used, how they're utilized. But this idea that the general brought up before about adaptation in warfare, how quickly and how well forces adapt, because do these concepts, will they hold up? And that's questionable at this point. So I think, from the Marine Corps perspective, EABO, smaller forces that are lighter. Ukraine has kind of shown some proof in that, but we've also seen, I'm a First World War historian, things bogged down in the trenches with overwhelming firepower and new technology like drones and off-the-shelf stuff that, again, the general had talked about, all being vitally important. Again, I think it's all of this together. So conceptually, I think we can form a credible deterrent. To the general's point, is that enough for, say, Russia to not take action? And that I'm not. Again, I'm quizzical, right? I've got questions. I don't know. In the area of the support for Ukraine, I don't think I need to point out for anyone that the United States is having its own issues when it comes to support for Ukraine. Unfortunately, the bill hasn't passed as far as providing funding. Our military is kind of overstretched in what we're providing to Ukraine, and dipping into stocks and whatnot, which feeds into that whole regeneration discussion that we were kind of having before. I think these are all vitally important, and I don't have clear answers to this, but it leads to a larger question of the civ-mil relations, the defense industrial complex, but beyond that, because for the United States, we don't actually start moving big movements when it comes to producing ordnance and stuff until after we're in a conflict. Is that something we can prepare for? To go back to one of the questions earlier, we're 10 years, 20 years from now. I don't have a clear answer to that. I can tell you historically, we've struggled with that. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Personally, that's just my professional opinion. I'll leave it there because I think that's about 2-3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, Njord, please.
Thanks. So good questions and also answers. I'll pick up a couple of things that wasn't touched on. So regarding the Norwegian restriction on, for example, allied training in eastern parts of northern Norway, or base policies, restriction on nuclear weapons in peacetime on Norwegian soil, etc. I think these deterrence and reassurance measures that was established during the Cold War has served Norway well, and also the alliance. I think they are reflecting their time after Second World War. I also think there's a tendency in to realize that there might be good reasons for updating them, and definitely sort of like coordinating it a little bit with what's happening in Finland and Sweden, that have more or less joined or are supposed to join NATO without any reservation whatsoever. So my guess would be that Norway would take a thorough look and probably modify and update those restrictions, perhaps. And also regarding the need for boots on the ground to prepare to be able to operate effectively in an Arctic climate, cold weather operations. So it's really difficult. So we here in this audience probably are used to winters, and we can perhaps go skiing or know how to clothe, etc. But I've met with, for example, U.S. Marines in Norway training there, and many of them have hardly seen snow. They are maybe from California or Texas or Utah, showing up in Bardufoss, northern Norway during January. It's complete dark and blowing and ice cold. It really takes time to adapt, and everyone that has been here realizes that. So there's no naivety that this is like an easy thing, but it takes time and it's a lot of rotation. And I think one way to go is like the US Army have done, to have specially designated units like the 11th Airborne Division in Alaska. But it's definitely an important task, and I think the military are on the task.
Many thanks indeed. And this brings us to the end of this event, and it is time to thank the audience, you here, and also the audience online. I would also like to thank once more the Norwegian Defence University College that made this event possible in the first place, and the Atlantic Council of Finland, and particularly Terhi Suominen for her excellent cooperation. And of course, I would like to ask you to join me in thanking our excellent speakers. Thank you.